Good morning. All right, let's see if I can remember how to do this. It's been a few weeks. Jesus is our perfect example. In Acts chapter 1, he tells all the disciples before he ascends to heaven, he says, listen, whenever I ascend, your job is to go into the world, preach the gospel, to do what I've told you to do. Do you remember where he tells them to go? You remember? Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to all the corners of the world. Okay? He mentions the top three there, and then it's spread on out. Everywhere else, everyone else, all encompassing. Jesus is our perfect example. In John chapter 1 and going into chapter 2, he performs this sign in chapter 2 at this Jewish wedding. And then in which the Jews, their place of worship is in Jerusalem. And then in John chapter 3, he's approached by this Jewish Pharisee, this rabbi, Nicodemus, representing all of Judea, the home of the Jews. Judea, Jews. In chapter 4, he approaches through a purposeful path to go have a conversation and share the gospel story with this woman. Do you remember where she's from? Samaria. And then in our story today, at the end of chapter 4, Jesus is going to share his love with who we suppose to be a royal official, which would represent the Gentiles reaching to all the corners of the world. Jesus is our perfect example. You know, he never has asked us to do anything that he himself has not been willing or has not done himself. Do you know that? He asks you to love God and love your neighbor. He himself displayed that in his perfect life. He asks you to go and share his love with others. He himself displayed that in his perfect ministry. And although we will never be perfect, it doesn't stop us from trying with every bit of who we are to imitate and be like Jesus Christ. I have two nephews. One of them's still a little young yet. The other one he's 3 years old, going on 4, and he is all boy if I've ever seen. Some of you have these boys, and they get into everything, climb everything. Every time we call, he's got dirt or a scratch on his elbow or something. He is all boy. But I remember not so long ago when he came in contact for the first time with a bug. I don't remember if it was a slug or a worm or a beetle. It was something that you don't go near and touch. But all boy, curiosity gets to him. And so he begins to go and look at this bug, and I remember the look on his face, even though he's all boy and even though he's experimenting and looking and checking this thing out. Have you ever seen a little boy go up for the first time and try to pick a worm up? Now, this really works if a little girl's going to do this, right? But they're willing, okay? They have this willful desire to pick this little bug up, but their face, have you seen their face? It scrunches up, this sort of squeamish look. Ew, this little bug. I call that a willful disgust, all right? A willful disgust. You're willing to pick something up, but you're completely disgusted by it. I am so thankful that my doctors and nurses do not display their willful disgust when I go get a checkup. You've been there. Maybe you have a sore, or you broke your arm or something. Whatever the case may be, you go to your doctors. They're supposed to be professionals. And when they come in and look at your ailment, your issue, and they have this willful desire to touch and examine and check it out to make sure they can offer you a way to heal that. You are thankful that they don't turn that squeamish look in their face. Ooh, that's really bad. When a doctor tells you it's really bad, it's really bad. And, it bothers me, one, because you're supposed to be a professional, and so you're not supposed to show those types of looks, even if it is disgusting. And two, when you show your disgust, it really worries me as to how disgusting it really is. I'm glad that my doctors and nurses do not look at me or treat me with a willful disgust. Maybe you've been in a situation like this before too, where you were willing to help somebody out, maybe to go into their home, maybe to go to their somewhere where they've been. Mothers with teenage boys, helping them pack their bag after a day of practice, or cleaning their practice uniform. It is a willful disgust. You are willing to do it, but it's absolutely disgusting. It's dirty. It's something you don't want to deal with. I think some of us, we all come here today from a completely unique place. Whether it's where you live or maybe in your head, you have come here today for a reason, for a purpose, whatever that purpose may be, but you also come here from your own place of struggle and trial and storm and difficulty in your life. None of us is absent or excused from those types of issues. But some of us have come, maybe us, maybe you have come today, and your approach of Jesus is that He's willing to come and to touch you, that He's willing to heal you, to help you, to provide what you need. But you're thinking right now in this moment, as much as you know Jesus will help, your perspective of Him is that Him helping you is through a willful disgust. That I'm a dirty person. I'm ashamed of all the things I've done. I regret the actions and the ways that I've lived in my life. And yes, Jesus is willing to heal me and to help me and to provide all that I need, but He is so utterly disgusted with me and how dirty and filthy I really am. I mean, if we're honest, we've all been there before, right? We've all come to His throne, come to this place in our lives where we know Jesus is willing to help, but we also have this perception of who we are and how dirty and ashamed and how much regret we have for the things we've done in our life, where we feel as though Jesus comes to us with a willful disgust. There's only one place in all of Scripture that really purposefully lays out the heart of Jesus. I mean, you can look through the Gospels, you can look at the prophecies, you can measure His characteristics and who He is. You can tell what type of person He is, the love that He has. But there's only one place where Jesus emphatically says, this, if you were to look inside my heart, is what you would see. And Christian read it a moment ago. You who are hurting and broken, who need mending, who need healing, you who are in a storm of life and a trial, going through a temptation, a tribulation, whatever it is, Jesus offers these words. Come to me. Come to me. If you're tired, come to me. If you're heavy, come to me. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Do you know what a yoke is? Pull that slide up, the scripture slide up one more time if you don't mind. This here is not a gallows, it's a yoke. It's what you would, each one of those hoops, an oxen would put their necks through. And it's this heavy crossbar that lays down upon the oxen or the cattle so that they can drag this heavy equipment through their land and be able to perform the farming actions they need to perform. That's a yoke. And Jesus says, I want you to take my yoke upon you. Do you remember what he says? I am gentle and lowly. That's his heart. For my yoke, it is easy. The word there is kind. And my burden, it is light. You see, what Jesus is doing, it's a play on words, it's irony. His yoke is really a non-yoke. His burden is a non-burden. Come to me. Be tied and united with me. Work with me. And I'm telling you right now, my yoke, it's kind, it's easy. My burden, it's light. You see, Jesus doesn't come to us with a willful disgust. No, He comes to you and I with a willful love, a willful desire. He wants to embrace you. And He also wants so badly for us to embrace Him. Look here in John chapter 4. We come to this story, the first time in the book of John, where I feel like this character who we're going to read about is even more relatable than any of the others before. You know, maybe he's relatable because most of us don't come from a Jewish background, but I guess you would consider a Gentile background. We're not Jews, but we come from a different background, and so maybe that's why he's personable to us. Or maybe it's just the fact that this individual is a person who has deep hurt, deep angst, and he's going through a storm that some of you have been through. And even if you haven't been through, he's going through a storm that is the likes of what the rest of us have been through. So you remember at this point in John, Jesus has been identified as the light, the truth, the one who provides all beginnings as He Himself is the beginning. And then He performs this miracle in Cana, which is north of Jerusalem. And after performing the miracle in Cana, He goes over to Capernaum, which is right on the Sea of Galilee, and that's where eventually He's going to set up His home base for His ministry. And He goes to Capernaum, and after Capernaum, the Jewish Passover is getting ready to happen. And so while Jesus is in the midst of His ministry, He always goes back to Jerusalem, where everybody's supposed to go during the Passover to celebrate the Passover. So He leaves Capernaum and goes the 50 miles or so down to Jerusalem. It would probably take a couple days to get down there, 2 or 3 days to get down there. And He would go to Jerusalem and be there for the purpose of celebrating and honoring the Passover festival. And while He's there, at the end of chapter 2, you might remember, while Jesus is here, He starts performing all these many miracles and signs, and these people around, they're looking and seeing all the signs that He's performing, and they're believing not in the person who's performing the signs, but in the power of the signs themselves. You see, I don't know if you remember, but a couple weeks ago, the last time I spoke to you, I told you, be very careful as we study these signs in the book of John, not to become enamored with the miracle itself, but become enamored with the one who performs the miracle. You see, at the end of John chapter 2, John makes this reference of Jesus' feelings, His heart here. And he says there were all these people who believed in Him. All these people believed in Jesus because of the signs that He was performing. And then he does this play on words. Do you remember it? They believed in Him, but He did not believe in them. Why? Because He knew the heart of man. They were more concerned with the miracle than the one who performed the miracle. You see? So now you go into John chapter 3, and Jesus is leaving Jerusalem. He's on his way up. He takes this direct path through Samaria. Although most of the time the Jews would have gone as far away around Samaria as they possibly could. They wanted nothing to do with Samaria, but Jesus had an appointment. The Samaritan woman didn't know she had an appointment, but Jesus did. He had to share his love with those who were the outcast, the disgusting, the dirty, to show that he will fully embrace even those. And so Jesus goes into Samaria, on up into Galilee, and that's where we pick up here in John 4 in verse 43. After 2 days, he departed for Galilee, for Jesus himself had testified that a prophet had no honor in his own hometown. So when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, having seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the feast, for they too had gone to the feast. So here's the setting. Don't miss this. It's very purposeful by John to put this here. Jesus says, a prophet has no place in his hometown. He's not respected. It's sort of like you've known those hometown heroes before, right? You've known those people who maybe they're a singer or a sports athlete or something, and while they're there in your hometown, it's just kind of like, this is just another kid. It's just another person. But then they leave your hometown, they make it big time, big stage, and when they come back, what happens? Oh, yeah, you remember we were best buds in high school. Oh, yeah, you remember we worked together at the ice cream shop. Oh, yeah, now this is your best friend. You know them. You're amazed, not at the person themselves, but at the fame they've begun to receive. And this is what the Galileans are doing. They've realized Jesus has gone to this feast. And now at this feast, he's performed all these miracles, all these signs. And so the Galileans, even though Jesus says, I'm not really welcomed in my hometown, you see the pseudo-belief of the Galileans where they go, hey, I'm more impressed with the miracle than the miracle worker. So the Galileans come to this point where Jesus understands and he's not fooled by their false belief. I wonder how many of us have come today looking to benefit from what Jesus can do instead of looking to see how we can benefit others because of what Jesus can do through you. You see, there's a big difference there. You may say, well, Todd, we do benefit from Christ. Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that we don't and we shouldn't. We always should and know that we benefit from what Jesus Christ has done for us. But if you've come here today looking to be a receiver, looking to be given a gift instead of being a giver, instead of being a participant, then you're in the wrong place. We don't show up so that we can receive. We show up so that we can give. We've already received what Jesus is going to offer. What are you going to do with what He's given you to help those who do not yet have that gift? Our purpose is to give, not to show up to receive. So the story goes on here. Jesus came to Cana in Galilee. He's gone full circle all the way back to Cana, where he performed, where he turned water into wine. And at Capernaum, there was this official, a royal official, whose son had fallen ill. I want you to pay attention to this official and what he does in this story. Now, I know many of you parents, I ask you a question. What is there that you wouldn't do to help your children? What is there that you wouldn't do? What lengths would you go to provide for your children? Many of you have gone extraordinary lengths to provide for those who you love and are still going those lengths. There's no place we wouldn't go to make sure our children are safe and taken care of. And that's exactly what this royal official does. You see, he's this person who's on this high level. He's in the high up in the the hierarchy, serving Herod Antipas. He is a royal official of stature and measure. And he lowers himself to travel 20 miles from Capernaum to Cana just to come before a man who he's only heard about. You see, at this point, his faith is only in this higher power. He realizes that he can't do anything to help his son on his own, and so he has to seek a higher power. His faith is vested only in what he has heard of a higher power, which drove him to show up to Jesus. Maybe that's what drove you here today. You're looking for an answer that you can't quite find yourself. And you've heard that Jesus might be that answer. Maybe that's the position you're in. I want us to notice this man here. Verse 47, the man heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, so he went to him. And he asked him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Now, Jesus is going to show up 2 chapters ago at the celebration of life. But listen, Jesus doesn't just show up at our celebrations. He also shows up at our hurts. He shows up at the trials of life as well. If we invite him, if we include him there. You know, so often, I've said it kind of before jokingly, but it's pretty serious too. Oftentimes we pray before we eat, but why do we never pray after we eat? You know, we always pray that God will bless it before we eat, but why don't we pray thanks after we eat? I've always kind of wondered that. Jesus doesn't just show up in the victories and the celebrations of life. He's also there to help us in the trials. And so this man comes to Jesus, and he's going to say these words that are going to seem rather confronting. He tells the man, and he's looking right at him, and he says, unless you, now that word you is plural. So he's not just talking to the man, he's just looking at the man. And I can imagine this man coming heartbroken, exposing himself, being completely vulnerable. Jesus, come so my son will live. This man has come 20 miles, traveled all the way to be with Jesus because he has 2 options. 1, Jesus comes back and my son lives. 2, Jesus doesn't come and my son dies. And Jesus looks at him. As heartbroken man, he says, unless you, and now this is plural, everybody is encompassed. Every one of us. Unless you see a sign, you will not believe. It's a confrontation. You wicked people, all you're ever looking for is a sign. All you want to see is what I can do. Is that the extent of your belief in what I can do? In these signs and miracles? You only believe in the higher power? What about the person? And so Jesus says, unless you believe, speaking of the whole crowd, and I want you to notice what this man does. You see, he responds to Jesus not by shying away from Jesus, but he separates himself. Don't miss it. He separates himself from the crowd. Jesus, I don't know about what the rest of these people believe, but all I know is that you are the one who can provide the healing and the help that I need. I'm asking you to come down. He separates himself from all of the crowd, and I wonder how many of us are willing to do that today. We're really good at telling our teenagers, hey guys, listen teenagers, don't give in to peer pressure. Okay guys, don't give in to peer pressure. Make sure that you guys are not doing what others want you to do just because they want you to do it. Make sure that you guys are the ones who are stepping up and stepping out to lead. I'm telling you this and I want you to listen. Don't give in. Because if you don't, you'll be better for it. That's a lesson our teenagers need to hear, but it's a lesson they also need to see. They don't see it. We're the first ones as adults to leave behind all the teaching we learned as teenagers, and they're not blind or foolish. They see our behavior. We want them to stand up and stand out, but we're too afraid to do the same thing as adults. Step up, stand out, separate yourself from the crowd. Only then will you receive the blessing from Jesus. The man responds to Jesus and he says, Jesus, I need you to come. In the Greek, this is an imperative. which means it is important. It is a plea. I am telling you, come with me now. He gives an imperative and then he gives a reason. Come because my son will die if you are not there for him. He separates himself from the crowd. I understand the signs and the miracles, but I believe in you. Not just what you can do. Jesus, come. Look at Jesus' response. Verse 50. Jesus said to him, do you see? Now, if you're reading the NIV, it's good, but the NIV doesn't give the imperative like it's not as emphatic as it should be. The NIV and some other translations, they'll say, you may go. That's not the way it's written here. You see, Jesus is going to match his energy. He's going to match his sentence structure. Jesus, come. Go. Not you may, not go on. Go. Go. And he gives a reason. The man says, come, because if you don't, my son will die. There's only two choices with the man. Jesus provides a third. Go, because your son lives. In our lives, so many times we get stuck in this rut thinking there's only two choices. There's only this way or that way. This is the only direction that it could possibly go. But when we begin to involve and include Jesus in our lives, He will always provide a third option. A way out. His way, the best way. Go and your son will live. Now, I want you to really ask yourselves, how would you respond? Because I've got to be honest with you, and I've got to be honest with myself here. Now, I'm a royal official who's high in stature, who's high in the hierarchy of the Roman government. I've got clout, I've got ability, I've got power, I've got maybe people under my control, and I'm a royal official who's come to this person believing in the power, a higher power, believing in all that I've heard. I tell you to come with me, and you tell me to go. I've got to be honest, it ain't good enough for me. This is my child's life on the line. I'm going to need to see something to believe what you're saying. I'm going to need to see it first. You know, I'm kind of like Gideon in that way. You know, Gideon, you see, he's this in Judges. You'll find him in Judges. He's this judge, this deliverer who God says, Gideon, I'm going to deliver you from the hand of the Midianites, from this evil and wicked army. And Gideon, his first response, you know, by the way, like as if the angel approaching you while sitting under a tree is not good enough, I need you to make sure that my fleece is wet and all the ground around it dry. I need a sign, God, before I'll believe that you'll actually do what you said you're going to do. And then I'm going to need a second sign. Now, all the ground needs to be wet and the fleece dry. And then I'm going to need you to perform another sign. And another sign. And finally, God, if you would just let me know in a dream. It's sort of like Abraham. In our daily Bible reading, we just read this a couple days ago. You know, Abraham, he's petitioning God as God is saying, hey, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham's like, hey, God, well, you know, if there's just this many left, what if there's 5 less than that, 10 less than that, 5 less than that? How many times do you got to ask? Abraham knows that God is righteous and just. We know that Jesus Christ is righteous and just and that He is not slack to fulfill His promise. Yet how often do we continue pestering, asking for a sign to grow our belief? I've got to tell you, I'm Gideon here going, Jesus, I know you're saying one thing, but I really need to see it. That's what we want, right? I believe you, Jesus, but my belief would be helped so much if I could just see. Let me see you perform, and then, we like to do that, right? Let me see you perform, and then I will follow you. I will believe. The man believed. It's that simple. His son is dying. His faith was as strong as understanding there's a higher power, even though he's not seen it. And his faith grew in the presence of Jesus. It grew enough to where his faith went from just believing in a higher power to believing in the proclamation of his words. The man believed the words that Jesus spoke to him. And notice what follows after belief. We have this debate all the time amongst people, maybe in the world, maybe among each other. Well, believe. Belief has action, all of these things. Just follow the biblical model. What always happens after belief? The man believed the word that Jesus spoke, and he went. Belief, it's just a vehicle that drives you to serve. And he went. What did Jesus tell him to do? Go. What did he do? Went. He goed. That's what he did. And as he was going, verse 51, his servants met him, and they told him. Now, I don't like the ESV here. So if you're looking at ESV or NIV, or I don't remember if New King James does this or not. I know the New American Standard, I'm pretty sure it does this. The King James, I'm not going to get in a battle about all the versions and stuff. They all have goods and negatives and all that. But what I like is the original Greek here, and the King James really captures it. This is really cool. Are you ready? Are you listening? This is really, really cool. Jesus says, "Go, your son lives." He went. The servants come to him, and what are the words that they say? Your son lives. Isn't that cool? The very words Jesus spoke. Your son lives. Oh, it's amazing. Don't miss this lesson. When Jesus speaks, it happens. When Jesus says it, it is done. The man says, I'm so glad to hear your proclamation, as I just heard the proclamation of Jesus. What hour was he healed? I'm just curious. And they say he was healed about the 7th hour. And the man at that moment realizes this is exactly the time when Jesus spoke the word, your son lives. When Jesus spoke, his son lived. We want life, and we want life abundantly. We want eternal life. We want Jesus Christ. He has already spoken. And when you bow down to the words and believe what Jesus has proclaimed, you will live. Not later, not down the road, right now. When Jesus speaks, it happens. I want to kind of close on this idea here in verse 52. He asked them the hour when he began to get better, and they said, yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him. Verse 53, rather. The father knew that this was the hour when Jesus said to him, your son will live. And he himself believed, but don't miss the last 4 words there. He himself believed, and all his household. You know, it wasn't just that Jesus, it wasn't just that this man rather believed himself, but it's that he's going to share it as a leader with his household. Just stay with me for 2 more minutes. I promise we'll be done. I haven't preached in 2 weeks. You had to give me 40 today, okay? Just give me a few minutes here. All right, my timer's going off. Okay. When this man, listen, this man, he doesn't just believe himself. I imagine he gets home. Maybe his wife says, "Where's Jesus? Where's the man at? Well, he didn't come with us." "Well, we don't need him anyways. Our son is alive." And the man goes, "Oh no, we need him now more than ever." You see, it would have been very much like us if the man would have just stopped at being happy with the physical healing of his son. But he wanted him to live physically, and he did not want him to die spiritually. One of our core values that the elders have presented that we're really going to hone in on and focus over these next 5 years, one of them is leadership. And the whole purpose is to train men, to train them up to lead the Lord's church. It is God ordained, God purposed. I hope you desire to be a leader in the Lord's church. But let me tell you, you can never successfully lead the Lord's church if you are not leading your family. This man shows us what it looks like to be a leader of his family. It wasn't later. It was immediately he shares the story of Jesus, and all his household believes. We all come from different places. We all come here today with a different mindset, dealing with different things. A room this size and those who are online, there's so many of us who are struggling. And Jesus says, "Come. Come to me." And while we struggle in our life and through the things that we go through, our response is, "Jesus, I want you to come. I want you to come and help and to heal and to provide what I need. Jesus, please come. Where are you at, Jesus? Please come." I learn in this story that if we desire Jesus to come, we must first come. He says, "Go." Notice the blessing, "Your son lives," happened after "go." I ask you this morning, you're hurting. You need prayers. You need healing. You need help. The Lord instituted a way to provide that through His body, the body of Christ. It's confession, speaking up, sharing my hurts, my sins, my ailments, my issues, so that I can receive the help that Jesus provides. We say, "Come." He says, "Go." This morning, will you go? Will you come? While we stand and sing.